Hey, welcome back to It Takes a Village. I am Jenny Schultz Thomas. I'm joined with Sarah Rental Jones, and we are back in 2025. It's a new year. How do you feel, Sarah?
I feel pretty good. I'm cautiously optimistic. Yeah, I saw a meme that said something like, maybe we don't need a new year. I could actually take like a gently used year
A gently used
that
year. Yeah, can we recycle? I'm going to recycle that year, you know, 1999.
mm,
No, high school,
not too
senior in high
bad.
school. I don't know that
hmm
would be my choice, but yeah. So here we are. It is new year. Whether or not we like it, I think actually it's going to be a great year. Feels like one of those times where I would normally say, "Oh my gosh, I'm dreading 2025 for lots of reasons." But at the same time, I guess personally, I feel like the break, taking a holiday break, immersing myself with family and friends and a lot of books, um, I feel more connected to myself and more connected to what grounds me and, more prepared to set intentions and to show up as who I am. And I think if we are doing that together, no matter what's coming, what we talk about politics or other things, right, that we have been, deliberating and thinking about on this podcast, it, no matter where you are or who you are, right, you're on the journey together. And if you're on it together, right, with people who equally show up and bring yourself to anything. I think that's kind of the hope that we talk about a lot of times, right? So doing this together feels more, I don't know, hopeful. And I think we can kind of do anything together when we put our minds to it, especially with our faith, through spiritual practices and the amazing people that we journey with. So I'm going to hang my hat on that. And not a borrowed year, but a new year full of hope,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I've had a similar experience. I didn't leave Omaha, but during the holidays, my mom came and we had
Mm-hmm.
family time just with her and the five of us. And then
Mm-hmm.
she just went back home on Monday. So this week has been, just the five of us and celebrating the new year and lots of football on my TV, which
Yeah, right.
I don't feel like I signed up for, but that's okay. Everybody's
Yeah.
home and it feels like a reset. And yeah, I just have like a sense of possibility, even
Mhm,
going into some worrisome circumstances politically for sure. It's like
mhm,
we can work together to make new things. And we
mhm,
have to, for me, it's like I have to stay in that mindset or I can
mhm.
easily spiral, but it's like there has to still be new life, new possibility, even in the midst of worry.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think knowing that there's an I don't know, I think that being
hmm
present to self and knowing that your own self is connected to a lot of other selves, right? Whether it be the natural world or your family or those that you just choose to walk alongside of in life, right? A spouse or children. Um, there's this deepening, kind of this widening, this expansive understanding of self as being connected, right, to something that is ever changing and growing. And sometimes the changing is challenging, a pruning, right? Some changes are really challenging. But when you lean deeply into the deeper understanding of what does that really mean? Um, I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about what we were talking about earlier, the emergent strategy, Anne Marie Brown, but just the intricacy of and environmentalists, right, who have read for a long time, a deep understanding that we are part of every living thing and the cycles, right? So we're in a new year, it's January 20, a
hmm
new year, right? These cycles are ever continuous and they either invite us to a lesser understanding, right? It's more intimidating as things change and what's about to happen, or this ever evolving story that we're a part of this continuous journey, right? Of evolving. And Anne Marie Brown actually talks about she's an activist, has been doing great work for a long time for our listeners, but she talks about this like death. She talks a lot about how instead of being afraid of death, right, we should just start to do better, right? We should get better at understanding our place in life. And so I feel like with changes and challenges and new beginnings, it's that same concept. Things change all the time, and we can either fear those changes or we can understand that as those changes occur, we also are evolving. We're shedding layers of fear or layers of, um, last year's worries, yesterday's worries. And so
Mhm.
if we kind of start to see each new day or this new year, which feels kind of too big, right? A year is a lot, but a new day, a new week. If we start to support one another in our understanding of how to embrace those things with generosity and care and an equal place, in the universe, then rather than being afraid of what's coming, we support each other through it. And I think that's just so much of what our faith traditions teach us
Mhm.
about in the middle of the acuteness of stress and worry, we kind of forget that because we're
Mhm.
also animalistic, right? Creatures like, so we just respond to fight or flight, like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? But we have within us, right, a deeper sort of, it's almost like little pods that you can open. And with
Mhm.
each year, it's like, wow, I do have this deeper wisdom that my ancestors have given me, or, that this natural world has put inside of me. And now I can open those up and start a new day with that. So I feel like today in this really great, generous place. I know it won't be that way every day, but I'm hopeful, right, to turn to sources of wisdom and strength
Mhm.
that call us to support each other in that, laying, new stepping stones as we take one faithful step after the next.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Do you have any New Year's intentions? Or I know I talked in my sermon on
Yeah.
Sunday about that I'm not a fan of New Year's resolutions.
Yeah. Right.
But are you anticipating anything or have kind of any goals for 2025 personally or professionally?
Oh, yeah. I think personally, one of them is to, I guess personally and professionally, but one of them is to read more, which I love reading. Um, and I was like looking back, people always sharing their stack of books that they've read, and I read a lot, but I, one of my intentions is to read both for pleasure and for kind of the betterment of self and the world. And some of those they're kind of merged in my world because if I'm going to choose something, I'm always one of the ones that wants to choose like refine yourself and grow.
Mhm.
But having this time to read over the break, I read a lot of novels, and they were definitely World War II novels, so it wasn't like easy reading, but just the beauty of storytelling and losing yourself in the radical imagination of even an expansive self, seeing that someone else's challenges allow you to grow, to think differently. So reading for sure. And then work stuff. Gosh, I could talk all day about different things. And then, spending a slower time, slowing down. I think I've been gone like 3 to 4 nights a week sometimes recently, with work stuff, just meetings. And I'm such a boundary person. And sometimes when you lean up to the busy time in our church life, right, that becomes really, really hard to balance. But I need to kind of reshift my priorities there and make sure that we're attending to other things. So I'm not. So one of my goals is to make sure I live into my boundaries and not just talk about having good boundaries.
Right.
So, those things are not super fun, but it leads to the practices and the deep wisdom that I think we're called to enact as faith
Mhm.
leaders. And I know I am. So that's one. I don't have any exciting, fun ones to share, but I would love to hear your new intentions for the year, personally or professionally.
Yeah. Well, I guess my biggest new goal is that I am going to be starting a program to get my master's in marriage and family therapy. So
Yay!
that's pretty big. I mean, for me, I feel like I've been taking baby steps towards it for a while. And so it
Yeah,
feels like a natural, evolution into being a student again. But
yeah.
it's a pretty big deal. And I'm just really excited about being able to incorporate what I learn into how I function in my role here at Countryside, down the road, maybe adding some. I mean, I certainly will have an internship toward the end of it and be seeing
Hmm.
clients, and that'll be amazing. Because I think one of the things I value the most in my ministry is one-on-one conversations. Like even when we do this, like recording the podcast is one of the
Hmm.
highlights of my week because really we're just having a really good conversation together.
Yeah.
And that's really meaningful to me. Um,
Mm,
and so being able to kind of jump off of that, realization that that's so life-giving to me, um,
yeah.
to just really, really think deeply and work to be supportive to other people. Um, Hopefully this is the next faithful step, as you say, like that
Yeah.
it feels right, feels right. So I'm excited to get started.
Yeah. That's so exciting. I know you've been, discerning for a long time which path and what and all those things. And, going back to school, even if it's small steps, I mean,
Mm.
it's one of those big decisions that feels, stressful at first. And then you make the decision. And then if it's the right one, you kind of feel relieved, right? It's
Yes.
like, this is exactly what I wanted to do, but I didn't know if I should do. And then, yeah, I'm so glad for you. I think knowing marriage and family therapy, gosh, I mean, I remember thinking through, I did that. I told you undergrad marriage and
Mhm.
family therapy was family studies was my undergraduate degree. And then there was a lot of steps beyond that. And some of the most amazing faith leaders, however many 20 some years ago that I knew had sort of lived in both worlds.
Mhm.
And seeing even, on the secular side in university, so much of the family studies curriculum was sort of like speaking two different languages, right? So then you go to seminary, it's sort of like a secular focus and a spiritual sort of theological focus, and the meshment of those
Mhm.
sound, I mean, what better thing to offer the church and offer individuals, right, who you're already ministering to? It's
Mhm.
giving the faith components and the deep spiritual undergirding, right, to some amazing sort of listening and deep skill set that people really need. I can't imagine a
Mhm.
more needed thing right now in the world than mental health practitioners who are also deeply rooted in faith. So I'm
Mhm.
excited for you, Sarah. I know that it's a scary thing to jump back into school, but one class a week, I think, that's a lot, but you will
Mhm.
manage and it'll be amazing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited. We were goofing around at home yesterday because my husband was talking about maybe going and getting his master's as
Hmm.
well. And then, Jack is a senior. So like, we'll all be in college together.
Oh my gosh, right?
Jack like
Yes.
quickly left the room. So, we'll
Jack,
we'll manage.
he's on his journey. We are all on our journeys, right?
Our Yeah.
Well, cool. I mean, personal things, work things, family things in ministry, it's not a 9 to 5. Like it's a web all the time, right? Of how to
Yes.
manage all the things. But thankfully, they all fit together well. I mean, having family connected to our work, having other families. I mean, we're a big family, part of the
Mhm.
church.
Mhm.
So, lots of skills and a, a lot of compassion, a lot of energy to do the work that we do. So, such a
Mhm.
gift that we're called to do this work. One of the things I think that happen a lot of times in faith communities, especially with faith leaders, is a lack of support systems, and
Mhm.
networks. Sometimes it's you're so busy that then connecting into that other clergy group or that, pastor friend or whoever kind of gets bumped off of the calendar. And I know we've been talking a lot about trying to reconnect and stay connected with the different clergy here and even draw people together.
Mhm.
One of the books that I think we were at the Faith Clergy Action Network, whatever
Mhm.
I think I'm calling it wrong, recently, and they were talking about this book. It's called Social Justice for the Sensitive Soul: How to Change the World in Quiet Ways. Dorcas Chains Tozan. A wonderful, I mean, she's wonderful. But this book, I picked it up then, I bought it, and then I took
Mhm.
it home to my mom's over the break and started reading it. One of my intentions for the new year as a professional, which also I think touches on some of the things I personally long for, like activists, making sure I don't just, do the work in my career as a pastor, but I'm also using my personhood, my deep call as Jenny, a human in the world, to show up in areas for justice and affecting change. And it looks different, right? I remember marching with my kids like strapped to me as infants,
Mhm.
right? With
Mhm.
William Barber downtown for years and years and years, doing a lot of kind of frontline direct impact action. And as a queer person, like showing up for those kinds of things, when we were fighting for same sex marriage. So every so often as your kids age or as you age, we got more gray hair, it looks different, like how you show up and what you're called to do.
Mhm.
And I think coming to Omaha and really learning the landscape of this community and the needs and who people are and what threats there are to their personhood and to human dignity. Um, it's kind of this deep listening for how does God call me, or what is my place, and how should I show up in these times? There have been a lot of frustrating moments because it looks so different. And plugging in as a person, newly here, and
Mhm.
where is that place to plug in, and what should I be doing? So I think it's like put the shit on the shelf, right? The shit on the shelf, and listen for um what is your like, where is their pain, or where is there a threat, and then in what ways are people of faith called to show up in general. And
Mhm.
so for me, this book kind of touched on some of those things, and I think the focus on, you can't really see this very well, but sensitive soul, like she
Mhm.
really talks about even Gandhi. She uses Gandhi as this really wonderful example of this very shy, went off to law school and in London, was so shy, could hardly even speak in public and rarely ever did. But of course, used his, nonviolent approach to really change the world in a lot of ways. And so he was a sensitive soul, right? One who wasn't marching, wasn't speaking out, wasn't making a sign, wasn't doing any of those things, but had this deep, deep kind of moral, ethical, spiritual grounding. And so when you have that yearning in your soul and you act on it,
Mhm.
there's always going to be a place for you to show up. And so I
Mhm.
think reading this book, I was thinking about, because I know of that group, the clergy group
Mhm.
downtown is going to be reading it, and then hopefully we're going to be able to have a small group reading it too at Countryside of
Mhm.
other clergy. Um, I think it's important for all of us to name that when there's a yearning, there will always be a place to show up. And so if you
Mhm.
just start asking that question together, like how should we show up? How should we be listening? Well, sometimes just listening together is the most important step. I
Mhm.
was I was on a organizing call before the break um, with some immigrant refugee sort of like administrators and organizers across the state in Nebraska, talking about these mass deportations, right? That may be
Mhm.
coming soon,
Mhm.
and they're talking about listening and communicating with educators mostly right across the system, giving some tools and resources to understand what your rights are, to understand if this happens then do this. But the real question for everyone was, well, how do we listen for what might be happening? Well, you
Mhm.
have to be organizing and coming together, right, and listening together, right, so that if one person is hearing something, then you disseminate this information. So sometimes listening,
Mhm.
right, is the strongest thing that you can do. So yeah, I know that we talked a little bit maybe on the podcast, but in the new year that we would be inviting, members or community to respond in different ways. I think that our clergy, in Omaha, coming together to read and to listen
Mhm.
together will be kind of a start for, well, how do we invite others to plug into this work?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that the book study may be open to all, and we'll
Oh,
be
good.
promoting, as we get closer, which is kind of barreling down like a steam
Right.
engine. But we're looking at reading the book, starting 2 weeks from today, actually, January 16th on Thursday evening.
Yeah.
So for listeners to stay tuned for promoting that, if that's something we
Yeah.
can all join in on. Um, and actually, I didn't mention it earlier when we were talking before we got on the podcast, but we are having some youth and one of our families going down to the Capitol tomorrow for the
Yes.
Legislative Action Day, to meet with a couple of our state senators and have our youth get there and have kind of a sense of what happens in the Capitol building, meet some youth from
Hmm.
around Omaha, especially Urban Abbey, be able to connect and build relationships because I think that's so crucial, right? We all know if you get a phone call or you get a text from someone that you are in relationship with and they say,
Yes.
hey, this is happening. Can you sort up everything and respond?
Yes.
Right. The depth of the relationship is often what will dictate, whether you trust that they're leading you into a situation that is worth dropping everything, that they know what
Right.
they're doing, that you want to show up with and for them. And so I think
Hmm.
it's great that we're continuing to build that network so that we
Yes.
know, who are the people that are not going to look past your text coming through, or, who are going to pick up when they see you calling.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, in organizing circles, there's always so much, even if it's just across a city. There are so
Mhm,
many things to attend to, and there's so many needs that you definitely some can be overwhelmed with. I can't do any. I don't know how to fix any of these problems. I don't know how to do any of this. So the more you build those relationships and trust that this person is really connected into this, and I'm a willing participant, all you have to do is show up, right?
mhm,
All you have to do sometimes is or write a letter or call a senator or right there's so many different things that you can do if you're plugged into those people who are on the front line. And I
mhm,
think talking about how we respond differently and we have different seasons of involvement, right? Someone who might have been on the front lines for many years working in advocacy might now just be somebody who makes some phone calls or who
mhm,
sends those messages, right? So there's a different way, or just someone who shows up and reads a book and says, I'm going to lend you my hope and wisdom. And, I may not be out there on the front lines, but I'm here supporting you,
mhm,
right? We are in this together. You can do this. And just offering sort of a gentle sort of wisdom to a group of people who are longing to make a difference.
mhm,
I'm so glad that the youth are going. That's going to be wonderful. Um, just learning and knowing that they have a part to play, right? And I mean, all of our movements have been led by young people, right, across this
mhm,
country. Change, every social movement has been sparked by young people. And so listening to and giving space for youth and teenagers to really share and to understand this is not just an adult space, but right, you can go to the Capitol. That's awesome. So hopefully the book, so if our book study is open to everyone, awesome. Social Justice for the Sensitive Soul, you can buy it anywhere, that you use online books or local bookstores. I'm sure the Bookworm
mhm,
probably has it. I
mhm.
know Urban Abbey sold us this copy.
Sure.
So yeah, in a couple of weeks we'll be starting that group together. Yeah, other intentions I think for 2025. I guess I would just offer just be, gentle with yourself.
Mhm,
Be gentle with yourself because, it's going to be really cold this winter, right? So some of it's going to feel like, oh my gosh, to get up and put on your boots and go out. But know that you have everything that you need, right? To love and be loved, and that the world wants to tell you otherwise, basically, that you don't, or that you're not good enough, or the color of your skin is makes you less than, or who you are, or who you love. And so be gentle with yourself, all of us, and find some way to connect to other people. And I think that is other people who care about you and who are going to be there for you. Make sure that it's a community. Make sure that if it's not a faith community or a church, it's a small group, somebody in your work that you can trust, someone, a neighbor who smiles at you, smile back, and start a conversation. I think the world can be a really harsh place. And we hear way too much about the harshness of the reality that we live in. We don't always hear about the generative spaces and the people who are doing the small things, the trickle down small things that really illuminate, right, each other. So be generous with yourself, read, or just broaden your imagination because your soul will expand. And what you think you can do also grows, right? If you think this is so hard and you can't face these circumstances or this is terrible, something, the spirit of love will open up inside of you and offer you what you need to face those challenges. And sometimes you don't see it within yourself because you're broken or it's really hard. And that's where you need that smile from the friend or go to that group or read that book together. Um, and that can be hard too. That can feel like, gosh, I don't know how to take that first step. And if you don't know how, you can always reach out to Sarah or I at Countryside or in any other way. Find a faith leader, find the barista at your favorite coffee shop. there's someone out there who wants to tell you that you can do it, that you are worth it, that you are enough, and that you don't have to do it alone. So on that note, I hope that we can continue and this work together. Doing the podcast every week is so great, but knowing that we are just part of this wider fabric of creating generosity and pointing each other to hope and to the hope that we have in God. And yeah, be gentle with yourself and let the snow fall, and know that you can put your coat on and go out, and somebody will be there to greet you. Sarah, any last words? Good luck on your first week coming up of your new program.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And I think the only other thing, just to echo what you're saying too, is, I mean, people talk about praying, and I feel like sometimes because we can have a certain emptiness of, we kind of have our thoughts and prayers, and that can feel frustrating when there's real trauma happening on the ground. But at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
like really praying that throughout the day, you're shown the next faithful step to take. I just
Mm-hmm.
so firmly believe that that leads to opportunities arising. And as we talked and mentioned emergent strategy, and we'll look into that more on, one of the things that Adrienne Marie Brown talks about is small is all. That's one of her
Yeah.
phrases.
Mm-hmm.
And so even a small action, you never know who might be walking in the door. You might be in your place of business or going somewhere, coming to church on Sunday morning, and you sit next to someone you haven't talked to in church before, and that leads to a new connection. It's just all these things. Like, I think, I know we're starting also, officially launching Web of Care, and that web image shows how we all get connected, and then we can do things together. So praying
Mm-hmm.
really for that level of small revelations,
Mm-hmm.
guiding us to where we can go. I feel like that always gives me hope when I feel like I can't do these huge things.
Mm-hmm.
But we can do small things. I think, as Mother Teresa said, small things with great love.
Yes, that's so great. Small things with great love. Well, friends, I hope that love finds you today, and take one small step and know that you make a big difference. Well, we will see you back here next week. I hope that you have a great week. And Sarah, good luck, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for joining
Sounds great.
today,
Bye
everybody.
bye.